Well, there are hundreds, perhaps thousands of delegates inside the Shaw Conference Center. I have to say, it felt culturally repelling to me. I'm more used to grassroots people, hardworking, blue-collar folks, or business people or professionals, people who work for a living and pay taxes. In there, I felt like it was an ocean of bureaucrats and lobbyists and hucksters, really, everyone with a little scheme. It felt like the World Economic Forum meeting in Davos, but that you actually see VVIPs. You bump into Tony Blair or John Kerry or the CEO of Pfizer on the street. Here, it's all the grasping lower-level bureaucrats, but they still get a pretty good gig out of it. I mean, five-star hotels, going to conferences around the world. It just felt like every single one of them was sitting on the shoulders of the industrial wealth-creating class. I don't know. Going in there, you could see a real difference between the makers and the takers. But not everyone who's at the conference is a believer that plastics are evil and government is the solution. I'm joined by Dr. Chris DeArmitt, who is an expert in plastics that doesn't believe in the ideology inside. Tell me who you are and what you stand for.
So I'm the author of The Plastics Paradox. I've got a PhD in polymer science, and I'm a crusader for truth. Let's not fight for political agendas or some end game. Let's first look at the evidence. I'm a scientist, right? So you have to look at the evidence and then make up your mind based on what the science says. So I read 4,000 peer-reviewed studies, unpaid, completely unfunded. I'm here on my own dime because I actually care about the truth and making decisions that make sense based on the truth. And I agree with what you just said. These people are just here for making money, making themselves feel important, and fighting for an agenda which ironically has the exact opposite effect of the intentions that they state up front. So that's a problem. They're saying that they're for the environment, and the things that they're suggesting are anti-environment and are scientifically proven to increase waste, increase litter, increase greenhouse gas, increase fossil fuel, and that is a scientific fact. So they're charlatans.
You know, some people in there are the kind of folks I encounter in Canada a lot, wealthy, rent seekers would be the technical term, people trying to get a grant or something. Right. But I sort of recognize them culturally. They're from Canada. They have a university degree. They're probably making six figures. I understand their patter. But what is hard for me to fathom are the hundreds of delegates from extremely poor countries that have real environmental problems that have nothing to do with, plastic forks in Canada or a plastics registry. And I can't imagine people here from Somalia or Nigeria, that this is a genuine, I bet those countries have very serious pollution problems, but none of it's got to do with plastics.
Right, so you make a great point. If you look at the correlation between what's green and how much something costs, you find out the more expensive something is, the less green it is. So if you want to generate a kilogram of gold, that means generating 27,000 kilograms of CO2. Right, so it's the worst for the environment and the most expensive. You never throw it away, you always recycle it because it's most expensive and because it causes the most harm. On the other end of that scale, you have like polyethylene, which is so cheap and so green that it's barely worth recycling. It's harder to make money recycling it. So that's exactly coming back to your point. We as rich people are telling these poor people to spend more in order to increase harm, right? We're telling them spend more money on metal, spend more money on glass, spend more money on things which are scientifically proven to increase harm and cost them more money, and it's money they don't have. We're sitting in our fancy suits, in our Escalades, and telling them what to do, and they don't have anything. It's a bunch of virtue signaling nonsense.
One of the weird things to me is the idea that plastics are toxic. It doesn't ring true. Everything we put in our mouth, in our body, next to our body, in our pocket, in our home, is plastic. It's the ubiquitous material, replacing in many cases wood and metal and the Federal Court of Canada recently struck down the government's view that plastics are toxic by definition. It was found not to be scientifically true.
The FDA actually has a plastics exemption. Everything plastic is assumed to be non-toxic because those molecules are so big they can't move, they can't get in your cells, they can't do anything. They're considered to be inert precisely because they are plastics. So it's the exact opposite of what they said. And I looked into the toxicity of plastics. They've been measured for 50 years. They're FDA approved to put in your mouth, as you just said. And they are non-toxic. They're less toxic than table salt, which we have on our tables. You could eat tablespoon after tablespoon, according to scientific studies, and nothing happens to you. You could eat tablespoons every day for a month and nothing happens to you. These things are as safe as sugar, they're as safe as eating an apple, and they're safer than nicotine or table salt or many of the things which we consider to be safe. So there are actual scientific definitions where you can look up what is toxic, what is non-toxic. Polyethylene, polypropylene, PET, polystyrene, PVC, they're all non-toxic, and that's not just the plastics, that includes the additives that go into them. They're also completely non-toxic.
You know, whenever we move away from plastics, like I hate the ban on plastic bags at the grocery store because, of course, I'm not schlepping around my big, heavy burlap bag with me. I never remember it. But there's just no way that reusing a bag is going to be more hygienic than getting a bag from the grocery. And by the way, you bring that bag home, now you can use it for something else, including if you have a dog, to walk up, clean up after the dog. Like, there's so many things. And I just think that that's such a step backwards. These paper straws instead of the plastic straws, the wooden forks instead of the plastic forks. And I just think surely everyone can see that this is a step backwards. And I keep on thinking, why? Why are they doing this? It can't be healthier. It's not cheaper. What are they doing to us?
When are they going to wake up? Your point is backed up by science. So the only way to know what's more green and less green is a life cycle analysis. That's the only scientifically proven way that's been validated for 50 years. And if you type in LCA for life cycle analysis bag into Google, anyone could do it at home right now. It takes you 10 seconds to find life cycle analyses on bags. There are 30 of them in the world, and everyone ever done says that the plastic bag causes less harm than paper bags, less harm than cotton bags, less harm than bioplastic bags as well. So given that the science has been done over decades, it takes you 5 seconds to find it. Why hasn't Greenpeace managed to type in LCA BAG into Google in the last 20 years? Why hasn't the World Wildlife Fund? People are banning the bags. Afterwards, they go and look at the consequences. They found vastly increased sales of plastic, and they call, in their words, exponentially more greenhouse gas. And this is exactly what you would predict by looking at the studies ahead of time. Instead, they make ideology-based policies which are counter-scientific, and then they have to go back and look like idiots because they have to reverse their own policies after they generated more harm.